One more time.
Put your hands together for the hosts of DevCentral Connects, live from their home studio, Boo Lamb and Jason Rahm.
Well, hey there, community. I am Jason Rahm, and this is DevCentral Connects, and we have a fantastic show for you today. We are going to talk to a gentleman from Secure Code Warrior, and we're going to talk about secure coding and why we need to secure code and how you might secure code and all of those things. And so I'm super excited about that. Boo, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. A little bit rainy outside. I think it's probably on track to rain for another 7 months here, but otherwise doing pretty good. How about you?
I am quite well. Yes, it's been a fairly stormy day today. I've been outside a few times and I've gotten very wet each time. And so, yeah, those are the. Although we don't get 7 months of rain here, I would have to move. I although rain itself doesn't bother me, it's the gray. Like if it's gray for 7 months straight, I could not do that. I would need the sunshine that's in the background of our esteemed guest that we're going to bring on here pretty soon.
Yeah.
But Boo, I have a question for you. Normally John handles the question load, but it's you and me today, and we are Johnless. And so, there were two shows on security side. There were two Johns on Security Sidebar on Tuesday. So, right. We went from 2 to none, and it's a little crazy. But I have a question for you. If you could upload one new skill, Matrix style, so it's like you just, jack in, they throw the code, and now you have it. Personal or professional, what would that skill be?
You know what? This has actually come up earlier this week. I think that I need to be able to sing. And I made this comment earlier. There's auto-tune, but there is not enough compute in public cloud to be able to give me enough auto-tune to make myself sound any good on any song. And so I would love to have that skill. If it could just get injected into me, I'll take that one. How about you?
Okay. Yeah, singing. Wow. So I sang in high school and I sang with a group, but I went to a small high school and a small college. So I think I have rural America, they take you even if you can't sing kind of, background. So
yeah.
But probably woodworking.
Oh yeah.
I love watching woodworking shows, and I'm always amazed. And yes, having the right tool for the job is helpful as well. But there's also a lot of art and skill to being a good woodworker. And I'm John talks all the time about having a hammer, and a hammer can be all tools, and that's pretty much the extent of my ability. It's like I can frame a wall like nobody. But if you go from the rough craftsmanship down to something small, that's not happening. But
I got to say, when I was in high school, I took woodworking, and that between woodworking and computer science are like the two subjects that I got the most in life out of, to be honest. Like woodworking and just being able to figure out how to use certain tools confidently and not hurt myself. So far, I still have all my fingers on me. So I would say, yeah, they should offer that for adults, actually, like some sort of high school level woodworking class for people who weren't able to take it in high school.
absolutely. Yeah. Well, hey, I'm super excited about today's topic. I've actually been on the platform and had a pretty amazing experience. So I'm really excited to talk to them. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest. So I'm going to paraphrase from their About page with a dramatic voiceover. In a world where code is at the heart of everyday interactions, Secure Code Warrior raises their shields against the post-scan, post-breach, post-event remediation approach, preferring instead to pioneer a human-led approach that uncovers, nay, unleashes the secure developer inside every coder. Please welcome the Global Head of Partners, Stephen Allure. Stephen, thank you so much for joining. Now, in your email, it's Stephen. Here on the thing, it's Steve. Which do you prefer? And I will go that route.
Steve is fine.
Good
Unless you want to
deal.
reprimand me.
All right.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. So I'm going to throw up your lower third, even though I did it wrong. I apologize, community.
No,
but,
that's good. All good. I
So,
write it
yeah,
Steven and I say Steve. How's that?
There you go. So how long have you been with Secure Code Warrior?
So believe it or not, last Friday was my 5th anniversary,
Okay.
which as a startup that's only 6.5 years old, that's a long time. So
Wow.
I had the fortune of joining the company back when we were 7 people globally, and I was the first person here in the US to help build out the organization overall.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's amazing. It's like it's kind of like the effect of driving a car, right? It's like once I'm in the market for a car, I was like, hey, I've never seen that car. But as soon as you like are attuned to that car, it's like, man, I see that everywhere. And,
Right.
Secure Code Warrior is one of those things. Just like I didn't know anything about it when I got a message a couple months ago to join a contest. And now it's like I kind of see it everywhere here and there, and people talking about it. So yeah, it's really cool. And 6.5 years, that's not a short amount of time.
Yeah, especially when you're employee number 7, like when you see a company that only has less than 10 employees, how do you know that that's the right move to make to jump over there?
Yeah, that's a great question, Boo. It helps when you have a close friend that you've known for 20 years. It's part of the founding team to build a little confidence. But I was actually on one of my first sabbaticals, which, gosh, I wish I took a lot more sabbaticals in my career. Maybe there's many more to come, but was really struggling to figure out what I wanted to do next because people mattered so much to me in the companies that I worked with. I've kind of progressively gone to smaller and smaller stage companies and always felt that sense of ownership and sense of community within that organization. And it gets harder as you go, to the next organization to really feel that without having some connection. So it was really helpful to know somebody on the inside. But once I started to hear the story and understand the impact and possibilities, I get really excited about it because it's, ultimately we're addressing a human problem, but in a way that the industry has not been able to effectively address in the backdrop of a market that continues to shift, to digitization and, digital transformations are happening everywhere, even before we all went virtual for a year and a half. So it's a pretty exciting space and one that, has a lot of impact if we can get it right.
Yeah, for sure. Well, on this show, we've talked before about the need to shift our security left in the software development cycle. That seems to be part of your mission statement at Secure Code Warrior. Is that actually the origins?
It's somewhat, right? So it's in our vernacular, it's more about starting left and shifting left, because a lot of the industry today is talking about what was done in batch downstream, let's just keep moving it or closer and closer to the front of the software development lifecycle, or SDLC. And, when we looked at the problem, ultimately, vulnerabilities are being exploited every day, and you don't have to look too far to see when the last exploit has occurred. The result of that is that code is being written with vulnerabilities in it, whether it's unknowingly or not. And the people that are writing that code are really more artisans than they are scientists, right? So the computer science profession in industry is more about taking the concepts and principles that they've learned in school and applying those on the job and building things that are awesome and do wonderful things to make our world better and different than without that. But most of what the best developers have learned to do is on the job. And the hard problem is that if most of the industry, and there's 25 million plus professional developers and growing, if most of what they've learned is a little bit of that woodworking skill that you have, Boo, right, was through some, through your own trial and error, maybe in mentoring from a friend or colleague, then how do you go teach them new skills to do things differently to avoid the problems that have been known for up to 20 years? And fundamentally retrain them to think and behave differently. So our whole starting point was looking at what developers, looking at the industry and seeing the fact that the same problem's happening over and over again, and it's too easy for the malicious hackers to do what they're doing today. The fact that SQL injection was identified over 20 years ago now, I think it's 21 years now, the solution to avoiding SQL injection was known 21 years ago. Yet up until the last publication of OWASP that just came out, within the last month, it went from number 1 to number 3, but still, remains one of the lowest hanging fruit to go exploit, which I kind of equate to, Boo, if you applied your woodworking skills to go build a house, right? And you even put a door on the house and windows, but you didn't put any locks, then what's the first thing, but you put a handle, what's the first thing that you're going to try? The front door. And if it's open, I'm going to walk in. And that's the equivalent of SQL injection, right? I'm going to go try the lowest hanging fruit first because that's the cheapest and most efficient way to do it, and then I'm going to go to the things that are harder and harder. But it's basically a recipe of going down the list and trying to find places where there's cracks or vulnerabilities.
Well, and that's a trivial example as an exploiter, right? I mean,
right.
Script kiddies can do that, and so those aren't hard ones, and because they're so fruitful, it remains on top. But I'll give you an anecdotal example of why I think that's so problematic. I'm not a paid professional full-time developer. I develop, but that's not my primary skill set. And so when I want to go learn something and build an application or whatever, I'm reading all the tutorials that are out there, and all the tutorials start with, this is how you talk to the database. And none of the tutorials are, I won't say none, but none of the ones I find have anything to do with security. It's just, hey, you want to talk to database, you make this SQL call. And it doesn't talk about parameterizing your inputs. It doesn't talk about anything other than run this SQL.
Right.
And so like on a Flask app, you can execute some SQL and then go. But if you don't know that you need to parameterize your inputs, and you need to kind of lock down those queries and all that, you're following the advice that you're given, and so you're creating vulnerabilities from the get-go. And
that's a great point. I mean, if you equate it to the spoken language, right, or the written language, if you were only taught the snippets of spelling and sentence fragment structures, right, and you had to go put that sentence together, how poorly or how awkward would those things read, right? It would be full of holes and full of grammar mistakes because you're only looking at a piece of it. And you're right. I mean, there's books that are still used in university today that are teaching functions, especially in C and C++, that any security professional will look at it and they'll pull their hair out and say, why are we teaching this? Like, that function should never be taught because it's completely insecure. but because
Right.
it's available, let's use it as an example of how you could hypothetically use this.
Yeah. And for the burgeoning developers, it's like, especially in the modern apps where you don't need to just learn how to build an app. You need to learn Docker, and you need to learn Kubernetes, and you need to learn deployments and all these things that are more than just building the app. It's hard to start at ground zero with the breadth of skills you need to do it securely. But then, to tap on security as well, the ask for especially the kind of the contracted, not the enterprise shops, but the contracted outsourced, hey, I'm a mom and pop RV shop and I need a web app. Those kinds of things, those are not equipped to get off the ground well and secure things. But I think even in the enterprise, it's still a problem, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we have, of our 400 plus customers today, I'd say, about a third of them are Fortune 2000 or Global 2000 companies. And it's a big problem in the enterprise space, especially you think about banks and financial institutions. A lot of their innovation is done internally because it's their secret sauce, right? And it's always been that way. The banking industry has always been very innovative, technically speaking. And the move to the web, the move to web apps. I was listening to a commercial the other day, and JPMC was touting their award-winning mobile app. Well, that those developers are really proud about what they've done, and as most developers are. And there's a constant push to get the next wave of functionality to differentiate your products or to put you ahead of the competition. And it's a really tough balance of doing it right versus doing it quick. But in the end, it doesn't pay to do it too quick, right? And that's where most organizations now realize, especially those that have been trying to address this problem for a while, scanning applications and finding and fixing those issues in a reactive way. That whole start left mentality is about, one, it's a cultural shift, right?
Yeah.
This isn't about, while security might be from Mars and developers are from Venus, the fact is they have common goals and shared goals, but they might not always understand each other and what they're trying to get accomplished or how they can accomplish it in a safe and secure way. But for those organizations that are moving in that direction, they're really able to think more about prevention and the fact that we need to change the culture and make security, in parity with quality, or security, is quality, and make it okay to recognize that there are flaws, make it okay that someone's got, something's been found and go fix it, but also reward the fact that, the organization puts that as a premium and is investing in trying to help developers learn how to do things differently, so that in the end, the ultimate cultural shift is when developers within an organization have the muscle memory to do things differently than they were doing before. And that's a hard thing, right, for any of us. It's hard enough for a physical skill, let alone any mental skill becomes the hardest ones to really change and transform.
It makes me think of this slide that a friend of mine has on a presentation of the cost of fixing a security vulnerability. And so on the left, it's like 1 hour of time and a few bucks. And then like each stage it goes through, the cost is 10 times more until it's actually in production. And then when there's an actual exploit out in the wild, then you have unlimited amount of expense that might cause.
Yeah, and no, absolutely. I mean, I think it's 100x from design to production, 100x, cost difference. So anything you can do to move the identification of those vulnerabilities earlier, you're going to save time and money, because you're ultimately stopping things from going into production or accepting the risk, which, to your point, Boo, you're not talking about thousands of dollars, you're talking about millions of dollars in, brand reputation, et cetera. So if you can arm your developers with a different approach to learn how to write code securely, especially for the things that are most prominent, right? We have 147 different vulnerability categories in our platform today. That's a lot of detail, right? And each one of them, to your point, Jason, right? Parameterizing your query is pretty simple if you have a one query statement. But if you have something that's a really complex an advanced query, it takes a lot of code and a lot of thought as far as how do I do this effectively overall. So it's not an easy skill to develop, but if you can start to do that with the things that are most prominent, then you're you're avoiding the easiest things to avoid, and you focus, on the harder things, but you've got an organization that really embraces it at that point, right? So it's,
Yeah.
it's ultimately, in different speak, a firefighter that knows as soon as the bell goes off, boom, we've got to go address this. So as soon as the next issue, is identified in an organization that's gone through that cultural transformation, it's not a finger pointing or whatever. It's like, let's go fix that, because we all understand the impact, and nobody wants that, exploit to exist.
Yeah, for sure. So, how do you, you want to talk about the platform? It's like, how do you go from the theory of secure coding to actually encouraging secure coding? What does the platform offer? I know it
Great
offers
question.
contests. That's my exposure, and I love that aspect of it. But it's a lot more than that, right?
Right. No, absolutely. So I'd say it in a couple of different ways. One is that we deliver a personalized experience, as you probably saw. Right. Today we have over 55 different languages and frameworks that we deliver content in. So we're trying to make it highly relevant to the developers, and recognizing, I forget if it was Boo or Jason that said, the fact that there's differences between writing infrastructure as code versus building a mobile app versus writing a web app, doing something on the front end versus the back end, or writing embedded code. So being able to learn in the language that you're writing in every day just makes sense, right? It's like, how do you learn English if you're attending a class in German? It's really tough. So that's one of them. The other is that make it code specific, put it in the context of a developer, and design the learning experience around how a developer thinks and learns versus how you want them to learn or what you want them to learn. So our whole approach is about, learning by failing and through that experimentation. So we've got, real to life code snippets that are the backdrop of helping a developer start to build the awareness and understanding that these vulnerabilities do exist, and can you identify them in real code, where they're, prominent, and then ultimately moving them towards, can you actually find and do you understand the effective and correct technique to avoid or resolve that issue overall? So when you participated in the tournament, how do you think you fared so far, overall, when you think about that detect versus the resolve?
Yeah. So that was a really interesting approach for me, because it's like both are double, right? It's like you have the identification where you might be identifying the problem, but they might tell you what the problem is, and you're trying to identify the attack surface. Loved that it's like you're kind of looking at both the sides of that, because it's important to understand both sides of that, but also then the fix action, as well. What attack surface this fixes versus, what is the fix for the attack. And I found that I was really good at identifying the attacks, and I was really terrible at fixing the attacks. And so I feel like I could use my own subscription to Secure Code Warrior to work on my Flask, and I don't know if you have Fast API on there. It's a relatively new framework, but Flask, Django, within my Python experience. Okay.
Yeah. So and you know what? That's not uncommon, right? Because part of that transformation is you have to start with awareness. So being able to recognize a problem when it exists is the first step in change. Understanding, the good from the bad, and understanding why that was vulnerable, and then, why one solution was an incomplete technique, right? It was missing maybe some syntax, and that syntax is the difference between securing it or not, or it's a client-side fix versus a server-side fix. There's lots of developers, if they got the client-side fix as the first solution, they jump at it and say that does the trick, and we teach them about what's missing there, right? But understanding the resolution or the avoidance side of that becomes harder, and it's why we break down these learning experiences into micro-learning concepts, where everything you do on our platform can be completed in 5 minutes, because we're really trying to just take really complex concepts, break them down into small problems, and then know that the learning is going to be incremental. So you might not have got it on the first try, but you learned something. Maybe ask for help, and you watched a 3-minute video that set the context of what the heck is this vulnerability in the first place. And then you tried the next challenge, and all of a sudden it was a new code snippet. It was still SQL injection, but now you're being asked to go find it, and you're applying what you learned before, and you're bringing that forward, and you're incrementally learning along the way. So we're really big believers on micro learning is the way to deliver content. And the more you can do that just in time at the point of remediation, the better you're going to be in that detect and fix equation. But to really affect change over time, it has to be a continuous learning program, because you're building muscle memory and then maintaining that, much like you would in exercise, right? Unfortunately, I was, in the best shape of my life decades ago. And just because I got in good shape doesn't mean that I stayed in good shape, right? And it's the same thing with secure coding. If you don't practice that, and if you don't have that top of mind, your tendencies are to atrophy over time. And that's why, we try to make it fresh and dynamic with lots of different ways. So we've got a platform that delivers a unique experience to every developer because of that specification, but then offers it in standard ways that everybody can engage in similar approaches. So you participated in a tournament, which are a great way to set a positive tone around security. So, in the network world, you've been doing CTFs for, decades. We're now able to bring that into the secure coding space and make it fun and engaging, but teach from a white hat perspective, not a black hat perspective.
Right.
We're not trying to teach developers how to go hack applications. That might be fun to do, but unless you want to be a pen tester, then it's not a reusable skill. If you want to prove that you can break applications, then great, go prove that, but it's not going to make you write better code in the future. We've got a training module that's really self-paced, that you just pick the language and you go, and we'll randomize content to start to practice and condition, your training. We've got a courses module that helps an organization bring together content of ours, maybe content of theirs, and structure that in a little bit more formal way, still in those micro learning sessions, but strung together, maybe organized around the top vulnerabilities that they're seeing in their scanning results, because they're trying to go eradicate those top 3 first. And then finally, we've got an assessment module that allows an organization to basically deliver a test that might be used just on benchmarking. We want to see where you are at the start and where you are 3 months later. But more and more companies are using that as a way to measure proficiency and follow a belting progression, or internal certification programs within their companies, as ways to acknowledge the skills that developers are realizing and promoting them within the company.
Yeah, I was going to say, around promotion, it would make sense to me that if security is a core belief of your organization, that having a program like this on board would be like, hey, you don't get to progress if you're not assessing at X level, then you will remain a junior or a mid-level developer or whatever, and you cannot progress unless you're demonstrating that you're catching the things in code reviews or even commits that are kind of the low-hanging fruit. Shouldn't be making those mistakes if you want to approach this level in the organization. So I think the assessment part is key. Not necessarily a punitive way, but just like you said,
it's a measurement way.
Right.
Right.
It might help
totally
guide their career too. Like, maybe their progression isn't to be that senior developer. Maybe there's another avenue within software development that they need to pursue, and that'll help them, determine that.
Absolutely. So the platform overall is really, when a customer subscribes to it, they've got all of that content and all of those modules available in our learning platform to really design a program that continues, to live within that organization. And there's some fun things that our customers are doing. I was just listening. One of our customers is Nelnet, and they just published a case study on our website. I was just watching the video that we published, and they did a whole WWE concept around it. So there's a lot of themes that organizations are implementing around their security practices overall. And they're talking about the belt that they physically built and deliver to whoever the winner is. And he was talking about somebody that just won recently, and he joined, the last internal video conference and had the belt on his shoulder and just having a conversation with everyone. So bragging rights are a big thing, but making it fun, right? There's Star Wars themes, there's Star Trek themes. There's, every organization has their own quirks and personalities, especially within the engineering organization. And the more you can tie to that, the more it just becomes a fabric of, well, this is what we do, right? And this is one element of our culture overall.
That was a word I picked up off of your website, culture. in how you guys are trying to develop that. And I think that makes total sense there.
Yeah. So we have a comment here, and we can kind of segue in. You had something to share with us, just kind of give a look and feel of what the platform looks like. But our good buddy Nathan Britton hosted one a couple years back. Great platform, education and fun. So, right to what you're saying, what my experience was. But you had something you were going to share. Can we bring that on now?
Sure. So do you want me to go through the platform a little bit?
Yeah, we're actually getting pretty close to time. We go over a little bit, but I want to be sensitive to the viewers.
Yeah, so
let's
talk about this first.
Yeah,
let's talk about this first. Why don't we start here? So, if you want your own experience to try this out, we are hosting our first ever DevOlympics next week. So, literally 5 days, 9 hours from now, the competition starts. It's fun and exciting. You'll learn something along the way, so don't necessarily worry about where you'll sit in the leaderboard overall. But there's 2 different tournaments that we're going to be hosting. One is for the Ultimate Warrior competition, and the other one is more of a champion competition. And there's some real prizes that are available. So I encourage you to go to securecodewarrior.com/event/DevOlympics. Check it out. Registration's pretty easy. It's going to be a 12-hour event. It's going to be a global event that we have over 1,500 people registered already. Some of our partners are going to be contributing content. It's going to have a live streaming component where we're going to have some live streamers from AWS. Jim Manico, who's one of the well-known in the industry, as well as others. So I encourage you to take advantage of this opportunity if you're a developer out there or interested to learn more about this topic. It's a great way to do that.
Yeah, I'm super excited about the DevOlympics.
Yeah, no, and the whole experience, right, is about making it different, right? So when we first, we're a 6.5-year-old company. The only thing that was available before we came into the market was computer-based training, and the whole concept of having a developer sit in front of a video for, I don't care if it's 5 minutes, it's going to be too long and too boring. I can't talk and find my own password at the same time, but if you change the experience, and I sometimes equate this to college. The hardest class I took in college was statistics, and it was applied statistics. And this first semester was just general statistics. I was great at memorizing formulas, so I did really well first semester. Second semester was applied statistics, and I thought it was a coup when the professor said before the final exam, you can bring a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper with anything you want on it, front and back. I fit every formula and every concept that we ever studied and talked about on 1.5 sides here. And I sat there and I get to the exam and it was 4 questions. And I sat there for the 2 hours of that exam and flipped that paper over 100 times because I couldn't figure out which darn formula to use to solve the problem. And that's a little bit about, that's a little bit of the challenge that we're trying to address. So we're not trying to make it easy, but we are trying to make it learnable, if you will. So we start with the applied problem. So you said you were a Python Flask guy, Jason, So just go into Python Flask. We gamify the experience, not to make it hokey, but to just make it fun, right? For those that care where they sit in proximity to their peers, we have leaderboards. If you don't care about it, I've had people say, what, I don't care about the leaderboard, but you know what? It was really challenging and interesting because I didn't know, I thought I knew these concepts and I got lots wrong. And I wanted to do the next one because I was like, wait a minute, I thought I understood that. So as you saw, right, we deliver the content in real to life code snippets so that someone can resonate to it. And I've had developers, yell out in the middle of a tournament saying, wait a minute, did you just, steal my code? I just built something like this. So the recognition is really quick and immediate. We try to make it quick and easy to do because we want, to go through repetition. We don't want this to be studying the problem. We want to use variety as a way to start to build that skill set. So, if you know something about XPath injection, you can quickly identify it and choose it. But you're going to find out if you got it right or wrong, in a matter of seconds. And if you got it wrong, then let's learn from that experience, right? And I had a developer recently say, I love the platform. It's all about learning through failing. And that's the most effective lessons, right? Is experience. So we're trying to collapse that experiential learning process in something that can scale across organizations with tens of thousands of developers, which is literally what some of our customers have and what they've done. So if you don't know it, you can go back. And if you don't, and if you're stuck, then we put in hints, and you can go learn some of those concepts that maybe you don't know. So if you don't have the conceptual understanding of the problem, then go learn about XPath injection and go watch a 4-minute video to bring that to life so that you understand it better, and you're learning about that problem in the context of solving a challenge, right? And how many of us have learned concepts and said, that's really cool, and then forget about it when it gets to the application, and maybe after the fact say, geez, I really failed that, and I didn't apply anything that I learned before. So if you can tie these together, right, and bring the conceptual learning to the applied challenge, then the likelihood of that retention becomes a lot higher. And what we're really trying to do is layer that understanding and use variety as a way to bring these topics to life, share and learn about these in small sound bites, if you will. Provide feedback so that you're learning more about why in this particular language, in this framework, why this is actually the vulnerable code. And then to your point, Jason, then it gets really hard, but it becomes really valuable if you're actually then challenged to go and identify the appropriate fix. So we've got challenge-based content that's fun and engaging. You can package those in tournaments to your point, and this what DevOlympics is going to be all about, that make it, bring that head-to-head competition together and allow you to make it even more dynamic and more fun, because you have real-time leaderboards that get updated as you're progressing through that. And as we've continued to expand our content, we've also introduced more comprehensive applications that bring together both the front end and the back end of an application, so that you can start to piece this together and understand the bigger picture overall. So it's all about bringing different learning experiences in a common approach that are language and framework specific, make it fun, make it dynamic, but make it really relevant so that you can start to create awareness, build an understanding, and ultimately build skill, which once you've done that, that in and of itself starts to change culture, right? Because a group of physically fit people have a very different mindset than a group of people that are aspiring to be to be in shape. Right. And that's really what we're trying to do is create that transformation.
Yeah, I love the use it or lose it aspect of having a continuous learning platform. It's like the whole world's going to continuous deployment, continuous integration. Learning should be the same way, continuous learning.
And it's even more critical, right? Because that continuous delivery process is all about empowering developers and that small team to go build and deploy at a fast pace. So you're really expecting and empowering them to be accountable for everything in that DevSecOps equation, right? And that's where I think there's even more relevancy of why it's important, and why getting it right and baking it into the process becomes an important part of how you can start to change the way things are done.
Yeah, well, I'm impressed with
cool.
the platform and what you guys are trying to do. And I look forward to DevOlympics next week. I hope everybody watching goes out and signs up. Even if you're not a developer, sign up for the experience and get in and look at the things that developers are trying to solve. Right. Because like if you're a partner that sells security solutions or whatever, these are the challenges that people are trying to solve, and it's best solved in the application. Sometimes services sit in front of those applications to mitigate the problems that developers can't or won't solve. And so understanding those is an important thing, being in technology, whether you're a developer or not. So sign up, go join the contest. I think it'll be a great experience for you. And if you don't have something like a secure software development platform, check Secure Code Warrior out, because it's pretty awesome.
Well, thank you, Jason and Boo. It's been exciting and a lot of fun to join you both today. And thank you for not making me sing Patti Smith. I had the headband ready and to go, but I don't think we'd want to see that. So
Peter would have been on cloud 9 if you showed up with the banner on and broke out into song. Yeah. So maybe next time.
I know my company, and we would have had a meme about that before the show was over.
All right. Well,
cool.
Steve, thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate your time. And, we look forward to the great things you guys are doing over there.
Excellent. Thanks, gentlemen.
All right. Appreciate it.
Yep.
And Boo, that brings us to the end. We got a little bit of promotional stuff to do before we get out of here, but I wanted to thank you for joining today as well. And
absolutely.
Yeah. So I'll get some promos done here, and then we'll get out of here.
Sounds good.
All right, everyone. So we have coming up, we have, where's my folder? See, I didn't get the folder right. Well, they're missing. So I'm not going to do that, but I do know that we have some shows coming up next Thursday. We have, Kickstart Your Heart. We've had a lot of questions here on the show about how to get involved and how to get into an InfoSec career. And so we have Adam Compton from Trusted Security. He's going to come join us. Thank you. Somebody found the banners. And so we're gonna do that next Thursday. And then we'll have our very first top 5 on the 26th, which is a new show that we haven't done before. And then on the 28th, we'll be back here with guest David Warburton to talk about the 2021 TLS report. And so that's what we have coming up. But before those shows, I have my kickoff of my very first. What is going on? Hold on just a second, everyone. I have missed, everything has been changed. I'm missing my countdown. So apologies to everyone. The files that I had in place are not there, strangely. So anyway, the show that I'm kicking off next week is The Core. That is on the 19th at 9:30 a.m. Pacific. And we're going to talk about packet capture the flag. So, we're talking with Steve about kind of web platform and looking at all that. I'm actually going to be down in packet capture with trace files. So that'll be fun, and I look forward to doing that. Thank you for joining us today, and we will see you out there in the community.